Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us at the Port of San Francisco Waterfront Plan Project EIR scoping meeting, the purpose of which is to obtain public comment concerning the scope of issues to be addressed in the draft environmental impact report for the Port of San Francisco Waterfront Plan Project. My name is Sherry George, and I am with the San Francisco Planning Department. I am the environmental review coordinator for the project, and here tonight are other representatives from the planning department and the Port project sponsor team.
Hi, I think I'm supposed to introduce myself. I'm Diane Oshima, the Planning and Environment Director for the Port of San Francisco and the project sponsor for the Waterfront Plan update.
And hello, I'm Joy Navarrete from the Planning Department, also helping Sherry with environmental review coordination.
Thank you. Please note, a recording of this Zoom meeting will allow us to make a transcript of tonight's proceedings. The transcript will become part of the public record for the CEQA process. Here's a brief overview of the agenda tonight. First, we'll play a 15-minute video presentation. The presentation will provide a short overview of the CEQA review process, a description of the waterfront plan, and it will explain how you can comment at different stages of the environmental review process. This video is currently on the Planning Department website at sfplanning.org/sfceqadocs and will remain on the website for the review period. After the video presentation, we will open up the meeting for public comment, and I will explain how you can comment live during this meeting. First, we'll start with the video presentation. Waterfront Plan Project. This scoping meeting is an early step in the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, review process for the proposed project. This step notices the public that the Planning Department is preparing an Environmental Impact Report, or EIR, that we welcome your comments concerning the project's environmental effects by September 25th, 2020. This presentation will briefly describe CEQA, the proposed project, the CEQA schedule for the project, and how you can participate in the CEQA process. In San Francisco, the Planning Department leads the CEQA process for projects in compliance with state law or statute, state guidelines, and local requirements. Here, the Planning Department is preparing a programmatic EIR for the Port Waterfront Plan update. The purpose of CEQA is to inform decision makers and the public of the project's potential environmental effects, to engage the public in the environmental review process, to disclose the potential project impacts on the environment, and to avoid or reduce impacts with alternatives and mitigation measures. The EIR is prepared for the project prior to any final decision by the Port Commission regarding whether to approve the project. The EIR, including the associated initial study, will describe the existing environment at the project site and in vicinity for each of these environmental topics, such as air quality, noise, cultural resources, transportation, and circulation. The EIR will then analyze individual projects' effects as well as cumulative effects, which is the project in combination with other projects in the vicinity. Now I'd like to hand the meeting over to the Port of San Francisco project sponsor team, who will describe the specifics of the proposed project.
Hello, my name is Diane Oshima. I am the Planning and Environment Deputy Director for the Port of San Francisco, and I'm happy to give you an overview of the Waterfront Plan project.
The Waterfront Land Use Plan was adopted in 1998. It is a result of a ballot measure that was approved by San Franciscans back in the 1990s, referred to as Proposition H, which among other things required the port to have a plan that gave first priority to maritime industries and uses along the port's properties. The plan was also to define goals and policies and acceptable uses for port property and applies to 7.5 miles of waterfront piers, wharves, and upland properties that are under the jurisdiction of the San Francisco Port Commission, stretching from Fisherman's Wharf at the north end down to India Basin and the Bayview community at the southern end. In 2015, after implementing a number of projects under the Waterfront Land Use Plan, Port Commission determined the need for a comprehensive update and created a waterfront plan working group representing community, city, waterfront stakeholder, and regional perspectives. The Waterfront Plan Working Group met for 3 years in public meetings and developed over 160 recommendations for updates and policies to be incorporated into the plan update. The Port Commission had public meetings on all of the recommendations and ultimately endorsed all of the recommendations from the working group and directed the port staff to incorporate them into an updated draft waterfront plan. The draft waterfront plan was released on June 2019, was released for a public comment and review period, and there were further refinements and revisions to the draft plan made in response to those comments, which were issued in December of 2019. I'm going to give you just an overview of the 9 goal areas that are now incorporated in the draft waterfront plan. Some of these goals carry over from the 1998 plan and some of them are new. Each of the goals are supported then by a series of policies that are included in the draft plan that speak to the specific issues that were addressed by the Waterfront Plan Working Group. The first goal is to preserve maritime uses in the working waterfront. This is a carryover from the 1998 plan and a reaffirmation by the public of the importance of maintaining the port waterfront for the wide variety of maritime industries and activities that currently operate. In addition to maritime uses, the waterfront plan also supports a diversity of activities and people that are attracted to and enjoy the waterfront in a way that complements and enhances maritime uses. This goal, again, is a reaffirmation of the 1998 waterfront plan goal to promote an urban waterfront that supports a wide variety of activities that really speak to the needs of San Francisco and the Bay Area region. The third goal, a financially strong port with economic access to all, is a new goal and policies that recognize the port's fiduciary and capital improvement responsibilities to fund repairs and improvements along the waterfront, which largely must be generated from revenues that are raised by leases of port property. The policies in this goal set forth the more details about the port's fiduciary responsibilities. Any improvements must be conducted to respect waterfront urban design and historic character and create and enhance city connections. These urban design and public values also carry over from the 1998 waterfront plan. In addition to the urban design and historic cultural values expressed in the plan also reaffirms the need for promoting and enhancing, completing waterfront parks, public access, and natural areas that all operate on the port's 7.5 mile waterfront. One of the key issues that threaded through the public discussions that affect all of these goals is really making the waterfront available and inviting to people from all racial, economic, and social backgrounds. And the park system is really a major element that makes that happen. One of the goals or the policies within this open space goal is to promote activation and a broad diversity of activities from the water as well as from the land within these parks and open spaces as an expression of that equity value. Another new goal in the waterfront plan update is to add a goal for transportation and mobility for people and goods. The port is not a transportation agency, but thus relies very heavily on the partnerships with the San Francisco Planning Department, the SFMTA, and the San Francisco Transportation Authority in order to ensure that the transportation system for the city and the region operate also well for the waterfront, particularly for industrial and maritime goods movement. Another new goal in the waterfront plan is goals and policies that speak to how to manage and advance an environmentally sustainable port, both in terms of how it operates maritime operations as well as building and land use activities, and in the management of the natural habitat areas and in adaptation of the shoreline. This relates to the other new goal, or a resilient port, which reflects a lot of public discussion about sea level rise, the effects of climate change, and the integrated and coordinated work that the port is doing for the Embarcadero seawall and sea level rise adaptation in alignment with the city's larger resilience, adaptation, planning, and improvements. Finally, the goal for Partnering for Success is a new addition to speak to the need for community engagement and public processes that enable the public to participate in the public discussions about how and where the waterfront improvements should be advanced, and how they are being coordinated in a larger city context as well. To provide definition about what kinds of changes to the waterfront that could occur under the proposed goals and policies in the updated waterfront plan, we have worked with the planning department staff to identify land use changes and growth that could occur under these proposed new policies that provide the platform for evaluating environmental impacts at a programmatic level in this EIR. And in addition to updating the port's waterfront plan, the port also works in close partnership with the San Francisco Bay Conservation and Development Commission, BCDC, as well as the San Francisco Planning Department. Both of those agencies have plans and policies that apply to the port's waterfront, the 7.5-mile waterfront, and thus, in order to align the regional, city, and port policies to provide consistent direction for how waterfront improvement should take place, we're working with BCDC and the Planning Department to develop amendments to BCDC's San Francisco Waterfront Special Area Plan, and with the Planning Department to amend the San Francisco General Plan and the Planning Code so that the land use policies and the regulations for advancing projects as set forth in the Planning Code are aligned. And now I will turn it over to Sherry to finish out the rest of the presentation.
The current schedule anticipates that we will publish the draft EIR and initial study by summer 2021. To seek input, we will distribute a notice of availability of the draft EIR to interested parties, and there will be a public hearing before the Planning Commission during a 45-day public comment period of the draft EIR. Following the close of the draft EIR public comment period, we will prepare responses to comments document to all substantive comments received and also identify any changes to the draft EIR as necessary to fully respond to the comments received. Following publication of the responses to comments document, a hearing will be held before the Planning Commission where they will be asked to certify the final EIR, which will consist of the draft EIR together with the responses to comments document. We anticipate the Planning Commission will decide whether to certify the final EIR as adequate, accurate, and objective in late 2021. Certification of the EIR does not mean that the project is approved. It means the Planning Department met the requirements for CEQA review. The Port Commission recommendation for project approval or disapproval is a separate consideration from the adequacy of the EIR and can only occur after the CEQA process is complete. The Planning Department will replay this presentation at a video and teleconference scoping meeting on September 9th, 2020 at 5 p.m. You may attend this meeting using the video conference platform Zoom and by phone calling 833-548-0282 and using meeting ID 831-0306-4931. To request assistance in additional languages, please contact cpc.waterfronteir@sfgov.org or call 628-652-7558 at least 72 hours in advance of the meeting to ensure availability. You don't have to attend the scoping meeting to provide comments to the Planning Department regarding the environmental analysis for the project by September 25th. You may email your comments to cpc.waterfronteir@sfgov.org or call 628-652-7558 or mail your comments to Sherry George, San Francisco Planning Department, 49 South Van Ness Avenue, Suite 1400, San Francisco, California, 94103. For details on how to access the scoping meeting or more details regarding the project or the notice of preparation, please go to sfplanning.org/sfsequadocs. Thank you.
Hello again, I'm Sherry George, Planning Department staff. Thank you for participating in the Port Waterfront Plan EIR scoping meeting. Just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted onto our webpage so people can fully access the meeting. The notice of preparation is available online as well at sfplanning.org/sfsequadocs. You may also contact me if you'd like a hard copy. Please note that you don't have to provide comments verbally tonight. You can submit comments by September 25th, 2020 by 5 p.m. Written comments can be emailed to me at cpc.waterfronteir@sfgov.org, or you can mail your comments to Sherry George, San Francisco Planning Department, 49 South Van Ness, Suite 1400, San Francisco, California, 94103. And you can call me at 628-652-7558. Please also note that the goal of this meeting is for us to hear from you so we can shape the CEQA analysis. If you would like to discuss the merits of the project further, please feel free to give me a call or mail or send an email, and I am happy to direct any questions that you may have afterwards. Comments provided this evening will become part of the record. Note again that all comments, written or via phone, are due by September 25th and should be limited to the environmental review process. Such comments should address significant environmental issues, factors in the environment to consider, suggested mitigation measures or alternatives to reduce environmental impacts, and to request to stay informed during the environmental review process. And we ask that all remain mindful that participants may be calling in from their homes and to please use respectful language. So we are now ready to open up the meeting for public comment. If you would like to make a comment tonight, you are asked to use the raise your hand function if you are joining us online, which is found at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will recognize your turn by announcing your online username. If you have called into the meeting, please select *6 to raise your hand, and we will recognize your turn by stating the call-in username generated for you. This is because phone numbers have been anonymized. And if you are joining by phone, you are encouraged to provide your name for the record. Comments tonight are limited to 3 minutes, but you can still submit other comments in writing or via phone until September 25th, and I'll provide planning's contact information again at the end of the meeting. We'll repeat this information and we'll have a 3-minute timer up as needed. And with that, we will hear from our first speaker. So would call-in user number 1, we will unmute you and prepare you for public comment. And you should be available to speak now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, to raise your hand on the system is *9, and then when you get called on, you have to hit *6 to unmute. So raise hand is *9, unmute is *6.
That is one way, I believe, but we are also working on doing the muting and unmuting through our producing so that
Fair enough.
you don't have to press several numbers.
Fair enough. Okay, let me get started. My name is David Pilpel. Here are my comments. And I think I'm in 8 different areas of comments. Okay, so item 1, public participation. The Zoom meeting requires email, which I don't use, and that limits my participation. I expressed concern last week at the EIR scoping meeting on the Potrero Yard modernization project about this aspect of Zoom and asked that that be fixed for this week, and apparently that wasn't done. So in the future for EIR scoping meetings like this, I don't see any reason to require email. I've participated in a number of city board, commission, and other meetings on various platforms with WebEx, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and Skype, none of which required email, and I don't see why an EIR scoping meeting should require email. That absolutely limits public participation and should not happen. Okay. I have watched the 15-minute video. That was helpful for context. The PowerPoint presentation that was included in that, I have not found posted anywhere. Can you please post that PowerPoint presentation somewhere, perhaps on the planning website? And on the planning website at sfplanning.org/environmental review documents, you have to click through some of the documents to get the scoping meeting information. It doesn't list the scoping meeting date and time there anywhere. It's just buried in the notices. And finally, on public participation, I see no reference to this scoping meeting or the CEQA review process on the port's website related to the waterfront plan or the port's events calendar. That would have been helpful. Even understanding that this is a planning department event, it would be helpful to have something, or would have been helpful to have something on the port's website about what's going on. 2, transportation agency. I like Diane. She's a wonderful person. I hope she's smiling because I can't see her. I respectfully disagree with her statement in the video that the port is not a transportation agency. The port does have ferry transit, passenger cruise, rail freight, and truck access. 3, project description. The project description in the EIR should be clear, complete, finite, and stable. 4, related projects. All related projects, public and private, should be listed, whether exempt or not exempt from CEQA, and whether approved or not yet approved, but planned within the EIR timeframe. 5, cumulative impacts. Cumulative impacts of the project and those related projects should be considered in the EIR. 6, historical. The historical features of existing port facilities should be considered. 7, sea level rise. Sea level rise using a range of reasonable scenarios should be considered. And 8, future notices to me. Please do keep me informed about the project, both through the port on the merits and approvals and through planning on the environmental review process. And if it's helpful, I can put this in writing and get it to you for the record. But I hope my comments are clear. Thanks.
Thank you. Your comments were clear and understood. Okay. I will move on to Howard. You may proceed with your public comment.
All right, Howard Wong. I was part of the Waterfront Land Use Subcommittee on Urban Design and a member of the Central Waterfront Advisory Group during the Land Use Plan hearings and attended most of the meetings. So one of the big changes since the Waterfront Land Use Plan was written is the COVID-19 pandemic. And the COVID-19 pandemic accentuates certain issues and certain components of the waterfront plan. One thing I can think of is that the waterfront is perfectly suited for many public uses because of its ventilation. It's open to the air. It's has breezes, sea breezes. It has open areas, both outside and large public spaces, interior to the cruise terminal, the piers, the ferry building, and many other facilities. So that the COVID-19 pandemic accentuates the needs to improve waterfront transportation, for instance. Ferry boats are fairly well ventilated. They have open decks, and they can certainly be adapted so that the enclosed decks are much more ventilated through breezes, through vents instead of enclosed windows. Piers can be open, fairly open and ventilated, so that even an enclosed space in the winter and rainy season has a much more air circulation and less likelihood of high dosages of viruses. So the COVID-19 raises a whole different focus, I think, on the waterfront that didn't exist at the time of its hearings and writings. And perhaps there needs to be a little bit of a supplemental addition to the EIR that creates a somewhat of a master plan and guidelines for the usage of the port, where it starts to provide the opportunities not only to large venues and companies, but to a lot of small businesses and people who are looking for space that is safe to use, and for people to sell goods or to provide food venues that are ventilated, accessible to all through the better transportation along the Embarcadero and better transportation along the water through ferries and water taxis. So I think there's this great opportunity that needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And if anyone else would like to speak tonight, please feel free to hit the raise your hand button or select *6 if you are a call-in user. And I'll note for the record and for those who may be listening in on the meeting that no one has indicated that they would like to speak at this time. So we'll wait a few minutes in case anyone is gathering their thoughts, and we'll share the contact information on how to comment beyond this scoping meeting before we close. And again, that's the raise your hand icon or select *6. Okay, so with that, thank you again for participating in tonight's meeting. Please note that your comments will be received until September 25th, 2020. You can provide additional comments via email to cpc.waterfronteir@sfgov.org, by mail to Sherry George, San Francisco Planning Department, 49 South Van Ness, Suite 1400, San Francisco, California, 94103, or by calling me at 628-652-7558. And we will have this scoping meeting and all of our materials available on our website at sfplanning.org/sfsequadocs. And that wraps things up. Thank you everyone for your participation tonight and your comments, and I hope you all have a good night.